Tonight in Democracy 20, a hard look at black economic empowerment and affirmative action after 20 years of democracy.
20 years ago, you never had those companies that have come as a result of black economic empowerment listed on the stock exchange. You've never seen communities participating and employees becoming shareholders.
And looking back, a constitutional court ruling on the 1st of April 1999 fundamentally changed the role of prisoners in elections. Well, hello and welcome to Democracy 20, a pre-election program in which we examine 20 years of democracy in South Africa. Today's topic is black economic empowerment and affirmative action. Both measures are deemed fair discrimination in order to address wrongs of the past. Now, there have been many challenges and unintended consequences along the way, but the commitment is still there to ensure previously marginalised groups are brought into the economic mainstream.
Black economic empowerment, a concept coined as a direct intervention in the redistribution of assets and opportunities to resolve economic disparities created by apartheid. Since it became law just over 10 years ago, there has been some progress. But because of the enormity of the challenge, a great deal still needs to be done. Studies have shown, as at December of 2012, black South Africans held 21% of the top 100 companies listed on the JSE. Only 9% was held directly. An employment equity report released in March last year shows that whites still dominate with just over 72% at top management level. KPMG conducts BEE progress surveys on a yearly basis, looking at listed and unlisted companies.
The surveys are saying that there's an improvement in the investment that's been made by companies. So the initial surveys that we ran showed an indication of level 7, which is very close to non-compliant. And now the most recent survey have shown an improvement of respondents on average are reaching a level 4, which is where most companies really ideally want to be.
Business is mixed in terms of achievements so far.
The reason why the B has really actually failed, and I think personally I was really very impressed in 2001, 2002 when Parliament started debates around B, and I looked at the elements of the different elements of B scorecard in terms of really looking at other aspects that we're not really going to really be putting emphasis only on ownership. But as much as we've really had these codes the last 5-6 years, but I think we're still really putting emphasis on ownership as opposed to other elements that must reach majority of our people. So if I look at the programs the last 20 years, unfortunately, South Africans, we're not really getting it to really impact majority of our people.
20 years ago, you never had those companies that have come as a result of black economic empowerment listed on the stock exchange. You've never seen communities participating and employees becoming shareholders. Yes, the scale, a lot of people are concerned that you haven't done it in a big scale or you haven't achieved the success that the country wants to achieve. In a country with a population of 50 million people, with an industry like the mining industry, we would like to do better on transformation, but the MPRDA has at least delivered some progress.
Black economic empowerment has also come with unintended consequences. Among these, fronting, a phenomenon where black companies act as faces to get deals. Criticism is also that BEE has benefited a few connected individuals.
We now talk of the usual suspects. So what we have managed to do is to create a few black millionaires.
It's really a shame what we're doing as a country, where we're not really promoting and encouraging our people to be entrepreneurs and industrialists, people who can really produce things. What we do is we're encouraging our people to really be tenderpreneurs and really focus on tenders instead of really focus on really being industrialists and real and genuine business people.
A mixture of factors has been identified as holding back robust progress in terms of empowerment.
I think our management of BBBE can be improved upon. Secondly, I think white corporate South Africa does not place as much emphasis and importance and significance and purposefulness on triple BE as they do on their finances, for instance. So if I'm a manager, I'm given 5 things to achieve that year, and one of them is BEE. At least 20% of my own bonus should depend on my accomplishing triple BE outcomes.
It's lack of people, lack of resources. I mean, one of the hardest ones has been the employment equity, has been skills development, and that is the biggest thing. And obviously that requires money from an investment perspective. I think that is the biggest bottleneck. People have come around and come up with wise ways of looking at ownership, but it's difficult to empower somebody that's not educated. So the biggest thing really is the education.
The KPMG survey shows mixed responses by business to the revised BEE codes. It shows most respondents did not welcome the more stringent measures, while others are looking at ways to try and comply with the legislation. Gloria Sefako, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Please remember, as we've been asking throughout the past couple of weeks or so, there are various ways in which you can get hold of us, you at home, participate in the program. Send us your emails to elections@sabc.co.za, or you can send us an SMS to 33726, and remember to begin the message with the word vote, and every SMS will cost you R150. For tweets, use the hashtag SABC Elections, and you can also find us on our Facebook page at SABC News Online. We'll try and give through your comments on the show as we go by. In fact, we'll try and even involve our guests who join us basically regularly on the show. Joining me right now is Vivian Atude, an economist, this at the Free Market Foundation, who has done extensive research into BEE issues. Ms. Atude, hello and welcome to Democracy 20. As we said, hopefully some of our viewers will speak to us as we do this interview. Black in economic empowerment, BEE as we know it in South Africa. Has it worked in South Africa?
I think my first kind of answer to that would be yes and no. Yes, BEE had worked to the extent that we have been able to, you don't need to be a genius in economics or some kind of analysis, just research by observation, you would be able to see that compared to 20 years before now, there is many more black people owning companies, being part of companies, being to the levels of management and top management in various organizations within the country across public and private sector, which wasn't the case pre-94. So that is the yes from my part of view. But when I say no, it's to the extent whether we should be asking ourselves whether in the first place, BEE in its current form, was it the right approach for us to transform the economy? Because the question of transformation is not something we debate about. It's something that should happen. It's something that should move forward. But the mechanism through which we should get this is what we should be assessing at the point and asking ourselves, would BEE, 20 years down the line, we're already 20 years into it, 20 years down the line, would it lead South Africa to a point where we would be seeing the economy, the rainbow nation, which is the ideal that we all want to be? I
think on a follow-up question basically on that, having listened to both your yes and no, you have, for example, somebody, as we were watching that package, where somebody would say, look, I'm not going to have to work too hard to be a businessman, an entrepreneur. I'm going to wait for my turn, put in a tender process, get my BE, and that's it. I've made it in life. Has it changed the psyche of South Africans to become a more lazier, society, especially in the black community?
I think yes, because when you look at every policy, not only in South Africa, the world over, governments are in the business of not only creating economic environments, they are also in the business of maximizing votes. And that is why you see policies, sometimes policies where from a pure business point of view, you would say this doesn't make economic sense. But the government says this makes social sense, and social sense to some extent would mean also making people trust the government, being able to vote the government of the day, whether it's in the US, in Europe and other parts of the world. You see governments coming up with these policies. BEE, which is the policy we're debating today, has those elements of giving people the wrong incentives to some extent, where you see people who would have been better off? You ask yourself economically, what is the opportunity cost of BEE to people who have not been able to maximize some level of their potentials because of the incentives of BEE? They have this kind of dependence. If it's either the tender route or no route at all.
Now, how can private sector get involved or within the BE structure? I mean, there's always this question that it's only for you and I. How does private sector come in and play a role, if any?
I think the private sector and public sector, private sector in particular, which is your question, they are already involved in the BEE because according to the policy, if you are a company operating within South Africa and you have a certain number of employees, and you chose to do business with government, remember BEE policies are not mandatory depending on your level of operations in terms of turnover, in terms of number of employees. But it makes business sense from where I sit for every company within South Africa to be involved in BEE policies. And policies of transformation as a whole, like I said, whether BEE is the right mechanism is what we can debate. But I think that policies of transformation in a country where 80% of the population and over are black people makes economic sense when you transform.
Before we run out of time, I actually want to throw this question. Then the question of affirmative action then comes in. How does that work? I mean, over the past 20 years, how have we seen it enter into business, as it were?
I think it worked economically in various businesses. It's a problem of a mindset. If I'm an entrepreneur like I am today within the South African economy, it makes business sense for me to absorb a majority. If you look at all university graduates across the country, you see that a majority of graduates are black. So you would be not giving yourself access to certain markets if you exclude people based on their race, because we have seen that people don't reason with their skin color, they reason with their brains. And to my mind, I don't know if some brains are black and others are white. I know that people can be professionals irrespective of their skin color. So we wrap it up.
BEE and affirmative action over the past 20 years of democracy have worked in some way, but they can be improved throughout.
I agree with you.
Ms. Vivian Atu, thank you very much for joining us right here on Democracy20, economist at the Free Market Foundation. Thank you very much for joining us on Democracy.
Thanks for having me.
Democracy20 takes a quick break. Don't go away. We continue straight after this.
Zoom into Africa. This is Libya. The chairman of the General National Congress is Mr. Nouri Abu Samen. Libya got independent from Italy on 10 February in 1947. The population is more than 6 million people. One of Libya's major languages spoken is Arabic. Monetary unit, Libyan dinar.
Cultural Village is a large family homestead with 16 huts, each of them with its own specific purpose.
My responsibility, it is taking care of the family. As far as cleanliness is concerned, I have to make sure that I keep the home as clean as possible every morning when I wake up.
That's Kaleidoscope, Sundays 5:30 p.m. on SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still watching Democracy20, a special pre-election program which celebrates 20 years of democracy in South Africa. Now, our topic today is Black economic empowerment. We now welcome to our studio Gloria Serobe, the Executive Director of Women's Investment Portfolio Holdings Limited, also known as WIPHOLD. WIPHOLD is an investment and operating company owned and managed by Black women. Ms. Serobe, thank you very much for joining us on Democracy20. How are you?
I'm happening.
20 years of democracy. That introduction says it all, so to speak. It kind of encapsulates it that there's a company, a black company, or a company run by women, basically, let alone that we're speaking to you as a black female in business at this day and age.
When you say 20 years of South African democracy, you're also saying 20 years of WIPHOLD. We've just celebrated that.
And I think the natural thing that comes from that connection is that there would have been no withhold had it not been for the democracy. And it's very important that we say that all the time, because we do look successful now and all that, but we always have to say credit to the democratic system that we are there. And the so-called BEE policy actually gave, but we also came before the BEE policy itself in 1993-94, where there was no policy in place. We somehow created our own policy. And it just seems like the policy then looked like what...
You could have been the forefathers, or the grindstone of...
Foremothers.
Foremothers.
Please.
Apologies.
Yes. I think we like that, but we understood the mandate of what it meant to attempt to put the previously excluded people into the mainstream of the economy, and we tried to craft withhold to fit into that kind of mandate. And with all its ups and downs, we think we have perfected it in terms of what was expected.
I think then it comes to, it's not only are you the good story of South African democracy, so to speak. There's a company, a black economic, well, BEE company now, as we'd say, it's affirmative action company. It is a predominantly black African company. The question then comes in, there are also bad stories about black economic empowerment, but you guys obviously are the feel-good story about it. Where and how does it go wrong sometimes? What should we be looking forward to, or policy-wise, that we can change, looking ahead to change things that we have more withhold?
I like the good stories more. We've got lots of them. I don't think people understand that MTN, Vodacom, Cell C are good BEE stories. They were formed under this new government, and they formed with the conditions of the BEE into it. And in fairness, you have to look at MTN today and tell me if MTN is not run by blacks. And you know, there's always this accusation about tenderpreneurs and all that kind of thing. We are avoiding that. We have created big industries like that.
So the question about black people who get BEE contracts, so to speak, or tender, there are actually black people who are businessmen, who are real entrepreneurs out there, instead of this whole notion that they're waiting for handouts.
There are very serious black people who are entrepreneurs. And the difference is that they were not given the opportunity to do so before 1994. And therefore, those who can, they have. By the way, even the issue of the tenderpreneurs, I think we're being kind of like diluting people's efforts into this. Some of the people who are bidding for tenders, they are bidding with companies which have got scale. We just happen to be not in the tender space, and therefore, but this thing of actually saying people are tenderpreneurs, it is assuming that they are not entrepreneurs. Some of these people are serious entrepreneurs.
Being withheld, are women getting the fair share, so to speak, of those such contracts, black economic empowerment-based approvals as far as the economy is concerned?
There's lots we can do around that. Remember that the issue of women now is very complicated, because even our black brothers are not as supportive, quite frankly. So we are fighting a different battle there. It's a big war zone.
Another affirmative action.
A different story there. So yes, we are not getting there, but I think that there are sectors as well where women have done very well. In the accounting profession, women are quite prominent. There's quite like 4 or 5 accounting firms which are owned by black women, and are very successful for that matter.
Just before we've got 2 more questions to ask you, but we've got a minute, but I need to put this one through. After 20 years, is BEE still necessary? I think we sit back and we say we've got newborns, but is BEE still necessary at this point in time?
Until big business face themselves in the mirror and agree that a distortion of the past has got to be dealt with, BEE is not going to end. It is always going to be necessary. The fact that we are in the boards, we are in these companies, it does not mean that we do not see signs of discrimination in different places. Of course, what is now happening is that there is a few people who are inside who all that is expected of them is to act the game of being an insider and do the right things and push the others up and so on and so on. But these institutions are quite large, and so some things and some cracks are falling all over the place. Yeah. So BEE, as far as I'm concerned, that I don't think the game is over yet. There's still a scope for that
in this society. Ms. Gloria Siroba, thank you very much for joining us right in Democracy20. Ms. Siroba is the Director of Women's Investment Portfolio Holdings, also known as Wiphold, speaking to us right here on Democracy20, basically telling us, how Wiphold has, as a company, fared over the past 20 years. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Now, thank you for sharing those views with us. Right now, we're going to take a quick look at some of the tweets that you've been sending through. I'll take a quick look at my monitor on my right-hand side, so don't be afraid when I look away at the screen. As you can see, this one says, on my side, BEE has done so well so far, even though there are so many challenges that need to be faced. That one coming from Victor. This one coming from Jabulo C. Bembe, saying, of course, BEE is flawed. It should have been better legislated. It should have been about black-owned instead of inclusive. Hashtag in SABC elections, as we've been asking. This one coming from Kosa Nostup. It says, it was a good start, but we should come up with more broader ways of empowering the majority. Remember, you can always hashtag SABC elections to send us your views. Also, check us out on our Facebook page, SABC News Online. Well, Democracy20 comes back after a short break. Don't go away.
SABC News plays a critical role in providing unbiased and reliable news. We have a well-established reputation of uncovering, reporting and delivering news. A significant growth in popularity of our news demonstrates the demand for our news content. We continue to provide unrivaled coverage of vital events in and out of the country. Wherever the news is happening, we'll be there to bring them to you at the right time. No one has the news covered like SABC News. We lead and they follow. SABC News, Africa's news leader.
Now, you're watching Democracy20. The extension of voting rights just before the second democratic elections in 1999 was a contentious issue. In the 1st of April 1999, SABC News reported that the Constitutional Court ordered that prisoners be allowed to vote. Reacting to the ruling, most opposition parties have called for an inclusion of other South Africans who at the time excluded from voting. Among them were South African citizens who would be abroad during the elections, permanent residents in South Africa, and those without a bar-coded identity document.
Today's ruling set aside an earlier order by the Pretoria High Court that prevented prisoners from participating in the electoral process. The decision was immediately hailed by the South African Prisoners Organization for Human Rights and the Human Rights Commission.
Today is Judgment Day. Prisoners has been given the right to vote, and I want to send a very clear message to the powers that be and those individuals who are fortunately or unfortunately in very strategic positions that South Africa is a constitutional democracy.
I think it illustrates once again the power and the all-embracing nature of the Constitution, that the Constitution is there to protect the strongest and the weakest, the best of us and the worst of us.
In terms of the judgment, the IEC must submit not later than April 16 an affidavit detailing what arrangements have been made to accommodate prisoners in the election. The IEC was also ordered to pay costs of litigation.
It shouldn't be like the IEC has lost a case. It should rather be like the legal system of the country has been given a direction, and that direction is that prisoners and everyone who qualifies to vote in terms of the Constitution be allowed to vote, and that is what the IEC will do.
The ruling only applies to people who were behind bars during the registration period, which began in November last year and ended last month.
That's a wrap of today's show. We'll be back tomorrow evening, same time, same place, 6:30, right here on SABC3 and SABC News International Channel 404, Democracy 20. You have yourself a good evening. The 7 o'clock English news continues after this break.